Happy Self Love Sunday, ladies. I hope that you're doing well. I hope that your journeys are going well. So, let me tell you, last week, right, I saw two very powerful things happen in terms of healing, and I had to come and talk to you about it. These are very public things. So, if you are on social media, you probably saw them, particularly if you're in my age group, 40 plus and up, maybe late 30s too. They were really huge for you because we grew up on both situations. The first one being the Fresh Prince of Bel Air reunion. It was their 20-year reunion. And it was on. It played on HBO Max, and I got a chance to watch the full thing. And I tend to like to watch those reunions for a lot of different reasons, right? One, you get to see where you were back then, what you were thinking, how you were feeling as a kid coming up on that. So I thought it was really lovely to see in the tribute they did to James Avery, who played the dad. It was just beautiful. They were crying, I was crying, right? But in terms of healing, what I thought was so powerful was the fact that Will Smith finally, after, he said 20, I think he said 27 years, and the original Aunt Viv said 30 years. They finally had an opportunity to sit down and talk. Now, these two had a relationship where, I think when she left the show, he said he was about 21 years old, but as he grew, he would make these videos and talk about, all these different things in terms of relationships. And Will Smith gives wonderful advice. And she would be in the media blasting him, like, just like tearing him apart because no one ever really knew the story. Only thing that they heard back then was that she was difficult to work with, and, they fired her. Well, you get to the reunion, which this is the one thing I'll say too. The one thing I do love about this is people get to hear the real story, because I think very often when things happen, the outside collective jumps to so many conclusions and you have no idea what the story is on both sides. It's just people pick a side, and that's something I'm going to come back to touch on in a second. But, that was huge for me. So when Will Smith sat down with her and they started talking, he said, the one thing I never got to hear was your story back then. The way you saw it. What did you see happening? And as she began to explain, it wasn't just what was happening on the set in her personal life. She was going through an abusive relationship. She was also pregnant. And listen, let me tell you something about being a African American woman, being a woman in general, probably, but I can't speak from that perspective. I can only speak from my personal perspective, in terms of thinking about career and climbing the ladder. The one thing that you would always hear as a woman about pregnancy was it was going to set you back. So imagine in her mind, this is 30 years ago, let's just go with her time frame, 30 years ago, in her mind, there was a lot of factors that played into it. For one, the show was huge in itself because it was an all African American mainly cast, which is huge in television back then in terms of family shows. There's also something that happens in the African American community where there is this stigma of light skin versus dark skin people, because due to slavery, the dark skinned people were more in the fields. The light skinned people, because they were mixed race, mainly babies, got to work in the house, right? So it set a precedence that if you were light, you were a higher authority, right? It's almost like that hierarchy, right? If you were Caucasian, above, right? And then if you look close to that, right, above. And if you were darker, like my skin tone or darker, you were considered less than. So for her to be a dark-skinned African-American woman experiencing everything she was experiencing at home, and then you have to come to work and you can't, you have to try to tweak that. You have to try to make it work, knowing all the trauma that you are experiencing. Now, let's be clear. Now, when you go, I work in corporate America, so yes, when you go to work, whatever goes on in your personal life, you have to leave it at home. However, there was some things that were happening on the set as well from listening to them too. And it just, when she got pregnant, they sent her, he wanted her to work this crazy schedule. Now he's 21-year-old, sending 21-year-old kids single. Of course, right? He's like, let's go, let's get it done. We need to work 49,000 hours and get it in, right? I was gung-ho when I was 20-something too. but she was a married mom. She couldn't do that. So she never was fired. She didn't sign a contract because she couldn't commit to what he wanted to get done at the time. She was because she couldn't sacrifice, nor did she have the help to sacrifice not really raising her kid, if that's really that really what it would boil down to do the job. So listening to this, it was beautiful because we got to hear him say it too. He was like, I was a 21-year-old kid, 21 year, and I was responsible for this huge show. At the time, I hadn't had the experience that I have now. So now I know what it feels like, as now I've had 2 marriages, one failed because he was divorced, and he said, now I'm a father. I know how hard that must have been for you to have to, do whatever you need to do at home and then to come in and work every day. He got the chance to acknowledge the fact that, he could see now why she had a difficult time back then. And what that says, ladies and gentlemen, is sometimes we have to stop and put ourselves in the other person's shoes. Now, there's times mentally where we can't do that. So that's what I got from that, right? A 21-year-old gung-ho, rising star, he couldn't put himself in the shoes of a dark-skinned African-American woman trying to make it in the industry at the time. He couldn't. He couldn't. But let me tell you what this, people say time heals all wounds. It wasn't the time, people. Let me just say this. It wasn't time. It was the work. Will Smith put in the work on himself because he could have very well took that same gung-ho attitude into his marriages with his children and allow it to still continue to fester today. Like, listen, it is what it is. But because he took his time to heal, took his time to really work on himself, he was able to come back full circle and acknowledge the hurts and the pains and acknowledge someone else's. Do you know, let me tell you how huge that is. Most times, people just want for their feelings to be validated. Maybe you can't feel them, but it was true for them. It was true for her what she felt. It was very real for her. So when Will Smith was climbing his career and he was in all these awesome movies and they was like, oh, we love Will. She's like, saying all these things about him. Like, he's not who you think he is. And at the time, he wasn't for her. He wasn't who he said he was. But as he grew, he began to change from working on himself. Now, I want you to go back to think. I want you guys to think about it. I made a few videos and I said this in a few videos. And please, if you haven't had a chance to go back and really listen to some of my videos, I really hope that you do. Because I talked about this before too. I talked about the fact that when you meet people on a certain level, right? So say for Will Smith, he was a young kid. Say there's 20 levels in life. He met her at stage 5. And she dropped off, right, at stage 8 of his life. So let's just go with that, right? Let's go 3 years of them together. So whoever he was at that time and whatever he was doing at that time, that's what she knows of him. That's what she remembers of him. How he acted towards her, how he treated people, how he treated her, how he didn't fight for her, because what he did was he said in the media at that time, she was difficult to work with. Now, saying that about being a rising star that he was and how he was so loved, saying that about somebody like her, he ended her career. And that was huge. But levels 9, and I'll just say this. So let's go with the fact that he's on level 15 right now, right? So say he's increased 5 levels. All she could talk about in the media was the levels he was on, 3 to 5. That's all, because that's all she had. But then when she got a chance to sit and talk to him this time, she had an opportunity to see, that he had grown and he had accomplished so many levels since that time. She could no longer hold him to the levels of where she met him and left off at him. Now, there are times that some of us won't get that opportunity to have those kind of situations where we can come back full circle with people, right? But this is why the one thing about was he could not, at the time when all this was happening, right? He couldn't really care what she was saying because he knew he had grown from then. He knew he wasn't the same young 20-year-old gung-ho, go-getter kid with no family, just running wild. He wasn't that anymore. He was a father, he was a family man, he was a husband. He was somebody who experienced many things through life and also probably experienced some of the pains that she did, right? So he had an opportunity to mature and grow. And because of his experience and because he decided to work on himself, it came full circle for him. So she had the opportunity to see that. She had the opportunity to see his growth. And that's the thing too. He wasn't just talking the talk. He walked the walk, and that allowed for her to say, you know what? I can sit down with him now. I can sit down and have this conversation because he's done his healing, and I've done some of mine too, because it had to be some forgiveness on both ends, right? Forgiving yourself and forgiving him for her to do that. Now we can have this conversation. Now we can have this conversation because so many people, talk about positivity and giving great advice and on social media or to a group of people here or a group of people there, and they don't live that life. So people are looking at them like, oh, you're hypocritical. That's not how you really are. But she had an opportunity to see, right? Oh yeah, and we had an opportunity to see those things that he's saying that those red table talks with his wife, those things he's saying on social media. He's really walking that stuff out, and it's not easy for either one of them. It's not easy for him to hear that he ruined somebody's career. It's not easy for him to take on understanding the emotion that she was going through and knowing that you added on to it. Nor was it easy for her having her career ruined, knowing that she was going through, had no help, and then ended up broke after this show because back then they weren't really making that much money. So just imagine all of that happening and somebody stopping your career. That was a lot on both ends. But when you do your healing, when you work on forgiveness, that's how you get there. You don't get there by talking it. You don't get there by saying I'm changed now. Get there by really walking that out. And I respected both of them. The level of maturity in that, the level of healing in that was beautiful. And some people say, well, it took them that long. There's no time limit on someone's healing. And it's not your place to say. It's so funny. When I read the comments sometimes, I listen to people talk, you can tell the people who have no sense of healing. They have no sense of work on self. And it's like, well, it's easy for him because he victimized and she was the victim. Let me explain something to you. There are so many people walk on this earth that have victimized people and also that never have acknowledged anything they've done. I don't like to call myself a victim, but I've had things happen to me in the past that people have not acknowledged. Some people don't ever acknowledge. He didn't have to do anything. But when you don't heal, you feel you don't have to do anything. But when you do your work, you know what you have to do. So that's not a true statement. And something else I love, and this is what happens in life when you grow up and you mature. You understand that to some degree, we have all victimized someone. Oh, you don't want to own it. Hurt people hurt people. And when you were hurt, you've hurt someone else. Therefore, you've made someone a victim. And most people don't go back and reconcile those things. So please stop it with the pointing and the judging. That drives me nuts. So that was a beautiful thing. And let's go to the next one. The next one was, there's two rappers, Jeezy, the Snowman, they're both out of Atlanta, and Gucci Man, who are two rappers that I kind of, not grew up on, but they came about a time. I was a little bit older when they came on the scene, but I definitely know the music. And they have this thing that they call Versus TV that Timberland and Swiss Beats started during Corona, just as a way to, bring about the music and culture, because music is a universal language of love, and it brings people from all walks of life together, and it's really beautiful. Music can move the soul, and it can free you in the moment. A certain song will bring you back, and you'll be like, yes, I remember that was my jam. So I think that is great what they were doing. But these two individual rappers, again, 15, 20 years of rivalry, of things that happen. Now, again, I wasn't there. I don't know the story as the people like to say was that Jeezy did something to hurt Gucci, and the result of that was somebody lost their life during the process of this, and it's just been a rivalry ever since. So Jeezy, who has been doing his own healing work with himself. Both of these kids come from absolutely nothing. They come from the streets. They come from a poverty that I'm gonna be honest that I really don't know. Now I didn't grow up with money, but I have both my parents, and we didn't have a lot of things, but I don't know a certain level of poverty that they experienced, right? I just don't know what that's like, to have to sell drugs or do what they needed to do to survive. I don't know that. And again, so many people will listen to this and they're, oh, they didn't have to do this. I don't know what anybody had to do, and neither do you. Again, with the judgments, I don't know. All I do know is that I don't know what that feels like for those two young men to come from that, come from absolutely nothing, and work hard, whether it's crafting their music, whatever they had to do to pull not just themselves out, but their families out of poverty. Okay, so that within itself, the success that is within that, and I'm not talking about what they rap about in their music and all that other stuff, and what I agree and necessarily don't agree with in terms of their music. That's not about that. You have to, if you strip all of that away, you have two kids that came from nothing, hardly had influence in their life, and became millionaires. Not by luck, not by chance, but by hard work, grit, and grind, and growth. Now, they may not have grown in the way that people think they should have grown, but you had to grow to achieve what they achieved. So, they get on this. Now, the rivalry was tense because of what happened. Somebody on his side supposedly killed somebody on Jeezy's side. It was the way the story is set up is that Jeezy sent somebody to steal Gucci Mane's chain. He paid $10,000, and as a result of that, one of Jeezy's friends was killed. They didn't get the chain. They didn't kill Gucci, and it was just it's been a back and forth. Now, again, I wasn't there, not there, don't know if that's the real story or not. And like they both said, no one knows the real story but those two. That's the truth of it too. So I'm not going to sit there and claim that, but let's just start with that. So when Jeezy extended the olive branch for them to do this verse. And here's what I thought was the level in this was beautiful. When they first started off, Gucci was, you can tell, he was just like, they were both a little bit on edge, but Jeezy kind of sat back, but that's his personality. And Gucci was kind of more like, I'm going to let you know some things. But that's also his personality. So people wanted to feed into that, saying, well, this one had emotional intelligence and this one was petty. It's personality sometimes, right? What I loved in it was that because Jeezy's personality is what it is, and because he's done so much healing work and therapy, which you can tell, there's clearly a difference between him when I first started listening to his music and now. He didn't allow his emotions to overcome his ability to deal with that situation. He knew when he put himself in that situation, it was going to be hard, right? But he also knew that the world was watching. He also knew that he was a businessman. See, this is a level of maturity too. When you grow and you understand, it's not just about you. When I walk this walk and I'm talking to each and every one of you about healing, it's not just about me. I walk it for my children. I walk it so they can see that people can change. I walk it so other women know that if you heal yourself, that if you work on your healing and loving yourself and your past traumas, that you can have the life that you dream of, or the life that you look over and so desperately see that somebody else is having. You go get that. But it starts within you, right? So, back to that. So he they started off and they did their music and they were talking in between, but towards the end, this was great. Towards the end, because he had maintained his composure, because he had showed the world that he really truly changed, I think that was when Gucci was able to see, like, nah, this is not the same anymore. And he said, I appreciate you extending your olive branch, and I accept that. Why was this so huge? Two things. One, he said, I appreciate you extending the olive branch. That means that sometimes you have to be the one to say, you know what? If I caused you harm, I gotta reach across the aisle to you. Sometimes you can't, but if you have an opportunity, right? But him accepting it, why was this so huge? And Jeezy actually said this in the interview. For those of you who grew up in my era, there was two large rappers back in the early 90s, and they were Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls. They had kind of went through some rivalry that was similar, and basically both of them ended up being murdered. Neither one of them in their rivalry had an opportunity to do what Jeezy and Gucci did. They didn't have an opportunity in my era to sit down and have that conversation. And because of that, people rivaled for years. So many people have died as a result of that situation. So many people, because people choose sides. So there was no healing that could take place. But because these two young men, and I give Gucci a lot of credit, people were upset at how he reacted to it. But again, we can't tell people how to react in a moment. The thing is, as they went on and he got to see that this was real and it wasn't just for show, he was able to let his guard down. He was on guard. I don't know what it feels like for somebody to want to kill me. So I don't know how I would react and what I would be on guard about, right? We don't know what that feels like, so just back off. I thought it was, first of all, him showing up was half the battle. Sometimes that's it. Sometimes just showing up is half the battle. That to me showed he wanted healing. Because you don't come to a place where somebody was, planning, tried to kill you. You don't come to a place like that and just to rival and no, you really want to see, can I move beyond this? I thought that was beautiful. Right? But because of their healing, and I think the world doesn't get this, they're showing these young kids that are out here today, rivaling and shooting each other and killing each other, that if you do the work on you, if you look at the bigger picture of what you're doing, right? Taking another person's life and living in animosity and fighting and all this and feuding, you're stopping your growth, but you're stopping so many other people's growth. Because of what they did, there's going to be kids now that can't walk down certain blocks that may be able to now. Because if they can put that aside, maybe we can put this aside. That was huge. It was huge for the African American hip hop community in general. That was huge. I think people need to recognize what healing can do. It doesn't just affect you, it affects so many people around you. Because of healing, I'll take it to me. Because of healing, it doesn't just affect me. I've also been divorced, and me and my kid's father are divorced. But because of healing, we were able to have them. It didn't just heal us. It healed our children. It healed our families. Our families still get along. That's what it does for you. It's not just about you. It's the collective. It puts not just you in a better place, but so many people around you. And as a result of that, our kids thrive so well. So well. They're not perfect, but they thrive so well. Man, my girls are killing it in college right now. One is about to graduate. She's a senior getting ready to graduate. The other one's a freshman. And then, my sons are doing, so much better. You can see the growth in all of them because of the growth in us. And that takes healing. And please stop acting as if this is easy. It's hard to do. I don't care what side of the coin you're on. I don't care if you were the cheater or the one who got cheated on. It's hard on both ends to recognize the hurt that you caused someone else. Most people don't do it. They don't. And here's the thing. Most people who don't do it have a group of people agreeing with them. So let's talk about that for a second, because I said earlier I wanted to come back to that. There is a collective out there that don't want to see what happened this week. Those two huge things of bringing families together and healing. They don't want to see that. It is so much more entertaining to a lot of them to see us fight and kill and claw and rip each other apart. But to see, and I'm sorry, I got to keep it all the way 100. To see Black people loving and healing. Oh, how beautiful. And publicly. First of all, we've never been who they say we are. They, the bigger collective. We've never been that. The way that they love to portray us on television and say we've never been that. But we've never really had the opportunity to show it like we have now. We live in a much different time. So to be able to see that on a large screen, television, to see it all across the world was beautiful. to talk about how therapy, because all of them have gone to therapy. I can't speak for Gucci, but I know Jeezy has. I know Viv and Will Smith talk about therapy and how healing and working on themselves brought them to this beautiful point in their lives. And we show the world that if you just do that work, if you just work on you, and it starts with self-love, that's what it is, right? Self-love is the root of the tree. And then when the branches is self-care, the branches is self-work, and all of that comes with the therapy and, acknowledging not only your hurt, but the people you have hurt, and diligently working on those past traumas, and understanding your triggers, right? And understanding that, you can't allow emotion to overtake you in certain situations, right? All of that comes with this journey. All of it comes with that. And please don't get it misconstrued. I know so many people. I was talking to somebody one day, and I was like, man, you sound like, we talked about a conversation, I would say this conversation maybe like 3 years ago, and I was talking to them not too long ago, and I'm like, man, you sound the same. The exact same. How do you sound the same? That's when you realize, that's when that thing slaps you in the face to say, there was no real growth or maturity there. You're still blaming everyone else. Still pointing a finger at everyone else. It's still everyone else's fault. It's like, really? And I'm just going to tell you, it's more people out there like that than it is of healing. But the thing is, this is why we need the healers. This is why we need the light workers. This is why we need the people to shed the light on why healing is important. Because even if they sound the same, you don't have to. You don't have to. Even if they don't want change, sometimes, and let me just say this too, sometimes what people think is change, it is really change for them in their life. But when you really can see the bigger picture of things, listen, that mountain that you need to climb, I'm gonna need you to go over here and climb it, and I'm gonna go over here. You know what I mean? So, but that's what this work brings. This is why I come here every Sunday. It's not just about my purpose. It's about telling you, if you walk this walk, stop posting those memes and, putting on shows for other people, and truly do your work. You're not just going to heal you. You're going to heal your present and future generations. Just imagine that. Having that mindset and that thought. So you can be a better mom, a better grandmother, a better wife, a better friend, a better lover, a better co-worker, a better manager, a better entrepreneur. All of that begins with this journey. You can have it all. Having it all, to me, is living a life of purpose. Living a life where you just fully give yourself away, your gifts, where you die empty. You can have it all. Because see, people think, everything is money for people. But let me help you out with that. Abundance comes. An abundance of all things comes when you do this work. Because then you will know you're worthy of that promotion. You will know that you're worthy of that business. You know you are worthy of being a life coach. You know you're worthy of being that therapist, that nurse. You know you are worthy of being, listen, even if you are a housewife, you don't work, you are worthy of being, of your husband coming in and caring for you. You are worthy because you are, first of all, you are an entrepreneur, okay? You're the CEO running that house. Be clear on that, No, don't let nobody put baby in the corner. You're worthy of the respect that's due to you as a result of you giving up your career to stay home to raise those babies. To be the hairdresser, the chauffeur, the teacher, okay, the manager. You know what type of time management you have to have? The housekeeper. Okay? So you will know that with this work. So I really hope that with all of this, anybody under the sound of my voice, that you take the initiative and the steps to begin your healing journey, to love yourself enough to start the healing journey. And again, if you ever need help, ever, in getting started, because sometimes, just getting started is half the battle, but we have to start to complete what we start and really work through this. I am here. Mo Sass, MOESASS fitness at gmail.com. Mo Sass Fitness LLC. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. You can always message me to get started on this beautiful, beautiful journey. And if you hadn't had a chance to check out the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air 20-year reunion, check it out. It's on HBO Max, as well as, for those who are in my era, I'll say, the Jeezy and Gucci Man versus is up. It's actually on Apple TV. Just to me to watch it from beginning to end, to see how tense it was in the beginning and how you could see that they were both kind of like right, and then to see in the end the beautiful ending of it all, to say, you know what, it's time for us to move on. This is bigger than us. Because of us, many lives are going to be saved. Can you imagine saying that? Because of you making that decision to heal, because of you making a decision to love yourself, so many lives are going to be saved. Think about it. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. For those who celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will talk to you next Sunday.